story with Kalani Sitake is ever changing, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page that this is a really tough situation for BYU. Let's make no mistake about it. I don't think there is anybody that would argue losing Kalani Sitake right now, which, according to sources that we spoke to recently today, is a real possibility. And losing Kalani Sitake at BYU, would it be devastating? Yes, absolutely. Would it be the end of football and would they plummet? No, they would not. I think BYU will be fine. It is one of the marquee jobs. Yes, it comes with challenges, but I think it's really important to understand the loss here is the good human. The loss here is ideal, the perfect fit to be the head coach of BYU football. That's what Kalani Sitake is. Make no mistake about that. I've known Kalani for over a decade, and he is as good a human being as you're ever going to run into. And whether you've seen him on this show, whether you've heard me interview him on the radio, whether you have seen him in person, you just know he's a good human being. That's the biggest loss for BYU. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's really hard to find quality folks that fit the mold. And it is a very unique mold to be the head football coach at BYU. Yes, you need to be a card-carrying member of the LDS church. Absolutely. You have that. Jay Hill, I think, would be the next head coach should Kalani leave. I want to make it clear, though, for everybody telling you this is a smokescreen or this is real, let me be as unequivocal as I can be. Kalani Sitake's people have had real substantive conversations with Penn State. This is not talking. This is not hot air. This is not extend my contract, as a lot of people have said. Kalani Sitake just got a pay raise to $6.5 million less than a year ago. I believe it was last December 7th that his contract was extended at BYU. And he was significantly paid. They almost doubled his salary at that point to $6.5 million. The issue for Kalani Sitake is never going to be his money. And I think this is a really big talking point. Kalani Sitake understands he is well paid. He has more money now than he could ever need in his life. Kalani Sitake, if he does end up at Penn State, if he does, this is not because he wants to make $10 million a year, which we're going to get into in a minute. The biggest single hurdle standing between Kalani Sitake and BYU is the compensation for his football staff, not just his assistant coaches, the entire football department. And sources close to the situation told me today, Kalani is well aware, and I know we've had this conversation on the show in the past, but Kalani Sitake is well aware that while he is the head coach at BYU, he is not nearly the reason that they win and lose football games. Kalani completely embraces, totally understands that while he has an ego, and he is a really good football coach, his assistants, their assistants, the support staff, the food and beverage people, the janitorial staff, everybody is why BYU wins and loses games. And that's the money that is between Kalani Sitake and BYU, according to my sources. And I think every time we've gone through this, whether it was flirtations with Oregon, real interviews where our job was offered to Kalani by Washington, we've been pretty damn spot on when it comes to BYU and Utah coaching situations. And I am telling you, this is as close as Kalani has ever been to leaving BYU. I can say that in all certainty because BYU has offered Kalani Sitake a long-term extension, a multi-year extension, and this is really important. I am told it's $9 million per year. That is a ton of money for BYU. But you know what's really interesting about this? BYU doesn't talk money. This is the first time again, I've been covering BYU since 2012. This is the first time any source of mine at or close to BYU has ever given me a number. Basketball, football, it doesn't matter. This is the first time anybody has ever said to me, this is the contract extension that we are hearing, that we are talking about. They're offering Kalani Sitake $9 million a year. $9 million a year. It is a huge pay raise. The issue is BYU has been hesitant to inject more money into the support staff. Not no money, because they have offered to up the salaries of the support staff, including his assistants. But it just isn't the money that Kalani Sitake is asking for. Kalani Sitake is well aware of the job it is to be an assistant, because remember where this cat came from. Played at BYU, grew up at BYU, went on to be one of the best defensive coordinators in the country at both Utah and at Oregon State. Kalani Sitake knows the job, and he knows the grind on the family. And that is his singular focus. The quality of life while you are not coaching football impacts the job you do as a football coach. Kalani is well aware of that. Here's the other problem. According to our sources, Penn State is preparing to offer Kalani Sitake $10 million a season and $10 million for his assistants and support staff. BYU is not anywhere near $20 million in football compensation for its coaches. That's not even a conversation at BYU. And Jake, that's the entirety of the reason why BYU is I would say is perilously close to losing Kalani Sitake.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the classic case of, hey, the coach needs to decide, where he wants to go. I mean, obviously, we're going to get to other situations today, as everyone's been obsessed with on Twitter over the holiday break. But I look at this situation, and I do feel like it has a lot of shades of other situations. You gotta decide what's best for you and your family. You gotta decide what's best for you and your career. I mean, up until this point, I feel like Kalani Sitake's resume and in his legacy, if you will, up until this point, is a Utah man, right? I mean, the impact he's had on the sport of football in the state of Utah, it's tough to measure that. And so, the question to me for Kalani is going to Penn State, is that the next thing for you in your career? Is kind of closing the book on the state of Utah, moving on to a completely fresh opportunity in a top 2 conference in the sport, in a program that's got national championship expectations, not aspirations, but expectations. I think that's a obviously major step up in terms of stature and in terms of expectation and in terms of the day-to-day grind. And I think that's, those are the things I think about. I mean, obviously the money, the 10-10 from Penn State. Obviously that's a major offer. But I think that for Kalani, I would agree the family side of it, I think, is obviously paramount. That's super important. You're talking about going from Provo to Happy Valley, and obviously we all know that that's kind of a unique place. So I think that there's a lot going on here. I think that when people like Kalani Sitake do the job that he's done at BYU, this is going to start to come up more and more and more, right? Yeah. There's a strong narrative that, whether we get to it later today or tomorrow, about BYU and their candidacy for the CFP and, whether they should be in or not in, or how are they not in, whatever it might be. The reality is he's now put them square into the CFP conversation, which is what BYU fan and everyone else has been asking for. So I just think it's a really complicated, emotional thing for coaches to make these kind of decisions. And I think we all want to look at the money, but to me, the money is just, hey, that's them flexing with that offer. Hey, this is how much we're willing to go out of our way to try to go ahead and get you, because you've got all these other candidates taking other jobs. So, I think it's a really difficult situation. And I do think that, again, from the school side, BYU should do what every other school has been doing very clearly, which is, there's smoke, our guy's going to leave. Yep, we better start getting on the train to go get another candidate.
Well, I think it's really important. There is this, I use the word misconception. Okay. And everybody that looks at BYU from the outside doesn't understand. Everybody wants, again, to talk about, the Mormon church and the magic underwear. You can have all that. And if that makes you feel better, great, knock yourself out. The thing that people don't understand is the revenue that Kalani Sitake has built by winning football games. BYU doesn't need you. There were all kinds of jokes today on my Twitter feed about how you better put some more money in the tithing envelope. I totally get it. It's a church. You want to make jokes. Do you guys understand that BYU doesn't rely on the church to pay for football? They don't rely on the church to pay for football. Football pays for football. The athletic department pays for the athletic department. BYU has no trouble paying their bills. And here's the frustrating part if you're a BYU fan. They have all of the means necessary to pay on par with the top jobs in the country, and they don't. That's the hard part. It's not a can we. Well, we better do a call this Sunday and all of it. They have the money. Do you know how many Cougar Tails that place sells and I halfway joke. Do you understand the volume of dollars BYU fans spend supporting that program? And I don't mean NIL and donor. I mean t-shirts. I mean parking spots, tickets, concessions, gear, all of it. Pep rallies, you name it. BYU fans spends their money on BYU football. They have the money. I can tell you one of the conversations I had today with somebody close to this situation was both frustrating for them. The feeling of frustration about this is significant. The issue where the church comes in, this is not going to come down to one man saying, okay, you know what? I can't lose Kalani Sitake as my football coach. We're going to give you a contract extension. Here's 10 for you and 10 for your coaches. Go win me the Big 12 championship. All right, coach, break. That's not how it works at BYU. There are layers of decision makers. There are too many opinions, and there are too many cooks in the stew. That's the biggest problem at BYU. And Kalani Sitake has done what Bronco Mendenhall would not do, which is navigate the politics at BYU like a pro. Kalani has navigated the politics. He has largely stayed out of it. But one of the biggest concerns my sources close to the BYU situation have talked about is Kalani's kind of reaching a limit at the end of multiple seasons now, where he'll get to this point in late October, in November, where the BS at BYU, the politics, there's this constant infighting on the business side of things, where, in the analogy that was used is very simple. Hey, if we need a new Gatorade bucket, I've got to go ask 5 other people if I can get a new Gatorade bucket. That's the analogy that was used. Instead of saying, oh, okay, here, you're the equipment manager. Hey, bud, I need a new bucket. It's got to be Kalani going and saying, hey, we've been waiting for this for X amount of time. Why do we not have it? Well, because Jim and Steve and Fred and Paul and Frank and Todd and Will haven't gotten together and made a decision yet. That's where he gets, according to people I've spoken to, late in October and all through November. It's December 1st and he's talking to Penn State. That's the situation.
While being in the CFP conversation.
It's not a matter of, like, somebody was asking me today, well, he just wants to leave because he knows he can't win a national championship at BYU. You have no idea what you're talking about. Kalani Sitake has no desire to leave BYU. What he has is a frustration with being the football coach at BYU that is not tied to, well, they're going to screw us again. Let me go to Penn State so I get in. It's nothing to do with that. It's the internal politics and operations that it's the reason that Bronco Mendenhall is not the head coach at BYU today. It is the entirety of it. He ran out of want to for the BS and the politics behind the scenes. Because notice, he didn't ride off into the sunset and stop coaching. No, he did not do that. He's taken multiple jobs afterwards. There is a burnout factor that is very difficult to get yourself over. But let's be very clear about this. Kalani Sitake is a BYU man yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I don't care if he's the head coach of Penn State. Kalani Sitake will always be a BYU man. The tragedy in this conversation, if he ends up at Pedo State and Happy Ending Valley, coaching the Knuckle Deep boys, which I still believe is only a 28% chance. The real tragedy would be his heart will be broken that it came down to this, because he has made it very clear. If you pay my people, I'll be here. If you pay my people, and if we have the assets and resources available to compete, I'll be here. It's not about my money. I was told today he offered to take less money and kick that money back to his assistants. And the answer was, we'll think about it. And you there's nothing to think about.
Would you say that BYU is going cheap in this situation, generally speaking, due to the fact they're seemingly not willing to just auto write a check for his people?
I think BYU's in a tough spot because they have an existential crisis right in front of their face. And they're having to come to that decision right here and right now. And, you know, one of the interesting conversations I had today is the lack of value in the Penn State brand. Like, the odd thing about this is Penn State can't get somebody of a Bob Chesney. Bob Chesney passed over Penn State. Bob Chesney is taking the UCLA job, as we told you he would. They couldn't get Matt Rule. And we can go over and over and over this. There is a wholehearted lack of want to coach at Penn State. And my opinion is Kalani sees this as an opportunity to leverage BYU to make systematic changes that have been in place for the better part of 20 years. And now really in the last 3 years, there's been a fight to get the resources they need. And yet he still has won a ton of games. He has had this team in position to compete for a conference championship the last 2 years. He's got, I think, his last 3 classes have been 3 of the best recruiting classes. And this incoming class is the best high school recruiting class BYU has ever had. And there is no part of Kalani Sitake that wants to go and coach at Penn State. That I am almost sure of. There is no part of Kalani Sitake that wants to go to Penn State. Will he take that job? Sure, he will take that job. Will he do it with passion and give Penn State, if he were to take that job, would he give Penn State everything that he has? Yes, he would. But make zero mistake about this. Kalani Sitake will leave his heart in Provo. He wants to be the head coach at BYU. He is passionate about being the head coach at BYU. But he also watched BYU basketball get a ton of financial resources. And one of the interesting parallels is the story I told last year, I think it was, where you had multiple sponsors canceling their contracts with BYU football because they were not honored, allegedly. And Jake and I played golf with one.
Yeah.
Who told us all about it. All about it. We were down in Utah County playing golf, and we were playing with a pretty big wig BYU donor who straight up said, yeah, I canceled my contract for BYU football because he had an exclusive in this particular business class. And I don't want to give it away too much, but in this particular business class to be affiliated with Marriott, the Marriott School of Business. And the salespeople said, yeah, that doesn't matter to us. We're just making money and we're bringing in 2 competitors for you. Cancel this contract. Close associate of Bronco Mendenhall and now Kalani Sitake. That's what goes on, and that's what makes you crazy.
Yes.
Kalani has no desire to leave BYU. I can tell you that this is what I said about the Washington situation, I believe it was. Washington straight up asked him, hey, well, they're allegedly talking money, talking situations, having all these conversations. And it just came down to a simple question. Hey, do you, if all things were equal and you could get a new contract at BYU or you could come and become the head coach at Washington, which one would it be? You know what he said. Kalani said, I would absolutely rather have the contract at BYU. That's my dream job. He said that to Washington, allegedly. And what happened? He left to Washington, right? No. He stayed in Provo. So my 25 to 28% taking the Penn State job. Why do I think that? One, he's not going. Do you think he wants to take his entire family, his entire extended family, leave the Polynesian community that he has so artfully and passionately and righteously built? Family. You think he wants to go to Happy Ending Valley and work for a bunch of people who support pedophiles? No, he does not. No, he does not. But if you're not going to take care of his people, and if you are going to tie his hands behind his back so he can't take care of his people, he's going to take the job at Penn State. Pack everything up. We're out of here. What it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's tough. Like, I often wonder with Kalani, like, okay, if it's not about winning national championships in terms of these jobs and how like what jobs you would consider leaving for, I think that kind of complicates things. I mean, I understand that he's built so much at BYU and all these things that you've talked about. But, I like with like if you like Lane Kiffin as an example, there was so much talked about, hey, well, it's LSU and national championships, and it's kind of this next step in a kind of a crazy career for Lane, ups and downs and all these things. And I look at Kalani and I just say, this is somebody who's been like Mr. Consistent, right? Like never really has had any like huge scandal, never really has put BYU in a bad position. Obviously ups and downs on the football field, but that's every program. And now he's as high as he's ever been, and it does beg the question of like, if I would love to be able to ask Kalani, like, hey, like what would it take for you to feel like there's a better opportunity than BYU? Because I think, one of the things that's very clear about BYU is yes, all the off the field stuff is better at BYU for Kalani. I think that's pretty clear. The problem is that the national perception of your program limits you with the CFP.
That's right.
Unless you win the Big 12, you are not getting into the CFP, in my opinion. And I've been saying that for almost a month now. And I think we're starting to see that come to fruition. And that's what I really struggle with for Kalani is like, hey, you've got, and I agree with you completely, Penn State is not an ideal place to leave BYU for. Like, that doesn't send a real strong message, But like if another, like again, the Oregon situation from a couple seasons ago, or if any of these, any SEC job, like I'm very curious how Kalani like looks at his future? I mean, is this a guy saying, hey, like, man, I'm not going to retire until I win a national championship? Or is this a guy that's more up the Kyle Whittingham approach of like, hey, man, I'm going to make as much money as possible, in the best way possible. I'm going to get my people fed. I'm going to get my family fed, and I'll retire when I feel like it, kind of thing. Because I feel like that's what he is. I don't feel like he's, just that the championship's the only thing.
I think championships are really important to football coaches. But if you think Kalani Sitake's only calculus is championships, I agree with you. I think you're completely up in the night. I mean, you have to understand that this is a guy who is very clearly motivated by God, his family, and Lavelle Edwards. And I don't even say that jokingly. And I know BYU fans might find this hard to believe. God and Lavelle Edwards are two different people.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I cannot tell you how many times, even at Utah, when he was a defensive coordinator, I would talk to Kalani Sitake. And listen, you guys, I'm an outsider in Utah. I am not from Utah. I am not LDS. I am not a Utah or a BYU fan. I am strictly an outsider. And Kalani Sitake and I would walk off the practice field together probably once a week. And I swear to you, we would talk about football, and he would almost always work in Lavelle Edwards and what he meant to him and how it's remarkable. So the idea that he would go to a shit stack like Penn State, I have trouble with that. And I think that unless BYU is just wholly unwilling to make the financial investment and allow the football department the latitude to operate the way that it needs to, I just think that it is. This will be a self-inflicted wound that BYU administration inflicts upon itself. I think that, again, I just keep going back to Penn State is so thirsty, you guys. And I can tell you, one of the text messages I had today, I think it is so perfect about Penn State. Compared to BYU. And this is from somebody who I think is one of the deepest knowledge guys on the state of Utah and the current situation at BYU. To leave a legacy of Lavelle Edwards, to try and go patchwork, one that was destroyed for Joe Paterno, is not a life's work that Kalani Sitake wants. And I think that is so fucking good. Well, this is a guy who loves Lavelle Edwards, who I think is deeply, deeply impacted by the words and the actions of Lavelle Edwards from his adolescence, Kalani Sitake, until today. The words and actions of Lavelle Edwards impact him, in my opinion. The mentorship of a guy like Kyle Whittingham impacts Kalani Sitake. You hear Lane Kiffin talk about, hey, he talked to Nick Saban, he talked to Pete Carroll. Who do you think Kalani Sitake's talking to? I know who he's talking to. You guys are crazy. You are crazy if you think he wants to go and pick up the pieces for a low character guy like James Franklin and a no character guy like Joe Paterno. He does not do that. I think he stays at BYU because I think BYU, the very fact that I was told directly today about numbers that BYU is willing to pay Kalani Sitake tells you they want the message out that they are not trying to financially shortchange their coaching staff.
But I'm really not trying to be a stick in the mud about this particular point, but I feel like this is the precise thing that we run into with BYU from time to time. about money and like, this came up with the NIL deal situation that flamed on them. The worry shouldn't be, hey, we don't want to be seen to be shortchanging our football program. That shouldn't be your concern. The
No.
concern should be, how are we not being seen supplementing the program? The message we should be sending is, hey, yeah, man, wow, BYU's got money, dude. And, their books are private, so we'll never know like exactly how much it is.
Yeah.
But, dude, they've always got the nicest facilities. Bro, Kalani and his staff and those players, bro, they're all paid. They're all taken care of. This is a Nike school. But the minute you allow just an ounce of doubt to creep in that crack in the door about whether you're willing to pay what is required to keep this train moving, you send the wrong message. And so I appreciate the fact that Kalani understands and sees opportunities to leverage his way into more money for his people, because I agree that $9 million a year and $13 million a year are two different conversations for a head coach in college football. But when we get down to everyday life and like, what you need to take care of your people and everything, we're not really struggling to do that anymore. This is all about, publicity. This is all about, news lines and narratives and things like that. Once you start getting into that $9 to $13 million range. So I just think if I'm BYU, my sole objective would not be to be concerned about, oh, well, we can't be seen to be shortchanging anybody. No, you should be trying to be seen as the program that has a ton of money. Like you want to have nobody doubts Ohio State or Texas or Bama or Georgia or Florida or hell, LSU, right? Even with the governor lying his ass off about trying to beat Jimmy Sexton and all the powerful agents, right? Like nobody doubts these programs. But if Kalani Sitake and this staff leave to go to Penn State, I assure you it will not be because, oh, Penn State's amazing. Oh, I got to go to Penn State. Man, it's just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. That's not what the narrative will be. The narrative will be that BYU was unwilling to pay what was required to go ahead and keep him and his staff and this system in place and move it in the right direction. And if their administration doesn't understand that, then maybe this is one of those painful lesson moments. But I really hope that's not the case. I really hope that they dig in and say, let's get this done. Like, let's just put this to bed.
Well, it's just interesting in talking to people at BYU about this and just having text conversations with people and, the way that BYU is operating. One of the things that's very clearly come out today is the injection of money from a younger group in basketball that has not happened in football. And I think the old guard, if that's the right word, the old guard, the folks that are hanging on, I think it's just one of those things where you have to figure this out. And the problem is BYU's got a window. Kalani Sitake is not going to do anything that's going to take him out of prep for this Big 12 championship game. There's not going to be a decision this week. And you also have to understand that, again, all the idiots at Penn State that are telling you, hey, he's gonna be gone on Wednesday, or anybody who thinks Kalani Sitake is going to do what Lane Kiffin did, which is make a decision or make it known before a conference championship game, before a college football playoff. Do you understand how much blood, sweat, and tears and passion and emotion and pain has gone into this for the last 10 years at BYU for this moment? Do you understand that? Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea? So the idea that I love all the people who are DMing me on TikTok telling me, oh, it's the Big Ten, he's not turning down. Kalani Sitake doesn't give a rat's ass about the Big Ten. Kalani Sitake doesn't. This cat's got one of the best recruiting classes in the history of BYU. He has access to talent. He's got access to the portal. He'd like more NIL money. But you know what he would like? He'd like his defensive. I was told today that it's guys like his defensive analysts. He wants a bump in pay for his performance staff because those guys spend so much time and effort. And it's just, they've got to be compensated at a level that makes the upper management of this coaching staff, the Kalanis, the Jay Hills, the A-Rods of the world who make the decisions on their offensive staffs and their defensive staffs. That's the group that needs to be able to control the finances at BYU football. Now, you want to talk about what scoreboard goes where and what sign hangs there, and that's not Kalani's purview. His human beings, that's his purview. All of his players, all of his recruits, all of his pipeline guys, all of his analysts, all of his video guys, all of the catering guys, the janitors, all of it. He wants them handled first class. And I'm not saying, and I don't even think he's saying that they're just not being paid at a level that is required to win a national championship. And frankly, they're not being paid at a level that they've earned. And I think that's what burns him so much because frankly, you've just got to find a way to build those guys up into the next level because that's where they all are. You're not trying to retain your defensive analysts, right? You're not trying to retain your grad assistants. What you're trying to do is give them the ability to thrive as to a level as much as possible. And I feel like he feels responsible for that. And this may not register with any of you and you might not care about it, but I cannot tell you how many dinners Kalani has had at his house for guys because he wants to take care of them. I cannot tell you how many times he has done little things like that. How many times his family will serve his staff, will work. The guy is just gold as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea he would lower his standards to go to Penn State, it's almost unthinkable.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I completely agree with that, and I think that the masses agree with that. And so if that were to happen, that doesn't leave us in a strong position as far as like what BYU did or didn't do here. And, the real trouble I have is just what's taken place under Kalani's tenure. I mean, you've gotten into the Big 12. You're now competing for Big 12 championships faster than I think anyone thought you would have.
Yeah,
you are you have roundly and soundly dominated Utah the last three matchups. I would say you're in position to win the Big 12 championship faster than they are. Like, you're owning the in-state rivalry right now. You're competing for a Big 12 championship. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers. I'm speculating, but just based on your performance, I'm assuming you're doing well with revenue. And, I just think it would be silly to not get this done. Like, this is one of those things in life where you're like, yeah, dude, like, I get it. It's more expensive, but this is part of doing business. Like, I'm glad that you've got an awesome video department, but what does any of it matter if, you've got a new head coach standing on the sideline that had nothing to do with you getting here? Like, I just think it's such a unique situation. Like, coaches can switch jobs in the Big Ten and, you can in the SEC, like, you can go from big job to big job, but for Kalani Sitake, with what he's built, with where BYU came from to where they are now, going all the way back to the Bronco Mendenhall day, like, there's a clear lineage here. And I just feel like not to pay the guy, not to pay his staff, it's just disrespectful to everything that's been built. You're shortchanging a guy who has suffered with you. Like, the guy didn't need to be here. He could have left for Oregon. He could have left for Washington. He didn't want to do that. But the Oregon job is miles better than the Penn State job for a guy like Kalani. Kalani is again, no shade to him, but he's a West Coast guy, right? West Coast mountain region guy. He is not an East Coast guy. That's just not who he's
and
been in his career.
He's also had the opportunity to go be the head coach at USC. He interviewed for that. Did they offer it? I have no idea. But I say that because you're talking about USC, Oregon, and Washington. Those are the three biggest jobs on the West Coast. And he's always in play for these jobs, right?
Hell, he was in play for the UCLA job early on.
Yes. And last year at this time, BYU bumped him up to $6.5 million. And now BYU, according to very well-placed sources, is working on an extension for $9 million for Kalani Sitake, which would be unbelievable. It's modern-day money.
Yeah.
And he's earned it. He has absolutely earned it.
Oh, I think with their resume, you can make the case that he's had one of the best coaching seasons out of anybody in college football.
In the history of BYU football.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
He's had one of the best seasons in the history of BYU football. That means something to him. So here or there, I think it is going to be very interesting to see. I mean, this is a cat. And I would remind you that one of the other things that was pointed out to me today that I think is really, really interesting. Who is, and I hope, and I know most people don't know this, but you have to have, you have to be a member in good standing to be the head football coach at BYU. It is not in question. And there's one guy. And his name is Jay Hill. What's the problem? And it was pointed out to me today. This is not my thinking, and I wish it was because I think it's exactly right. What is Jay Hill doing right now? If you're Jay Hill and you're watching all this, and a guy that you revere, because by all accounts, Jay Hill really respects Kalani Sitake, has given up head coaching jobs. You'll remember he was the head coach at Weber. And again, here's another guy, which is what I think is a great illustration. Fesi Sitake, all of these guys have had opportunities. Jay Hill has had opportunities to go and take ACC jobs. He could have been a defensive coordinator in any of the major conferences at several of the big universities. And where did he go? He went to BYU. And why did he go to BYU? Because he's a BYU man. Because he's a member of the church. And it's a great job. But if you're Jay Hill and you're watching BYU athletics refuse to pay you and the guys around you to a level that Kalani Sitake feels is important for your quality of life, are you really going to take that job as the head coach? I think if you're BYU, you're terrified the answer is no. And let's say that Kalani leaves for Penn State, which I think would still be unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't believe it's happening. Let's say he leaves. Do you think Jay Hill takes the head job at BYU or goes to Penn State with Kalani and waits for a better offer? Because make no mistake about it, as much as I detest the sex crimes against small children that happened at Penn State, and as much as I detest the disgusting, awful human being that Joe Paterno is and was and will always be, he's a piece of crap. If Kalani Sitake is the head coach at Penn State, they're going to win multiple national championships. Make no mistake about that. And I still think Jay Hill will go with him. He will not stay to be the head coach at BYU.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the case.
Yeah, and I think if you go to a new program, I mean, again, I know that we always talk about, hey, the honor code and the differences at BYU, they're all recruiting strengths, but I think that it goes without saying that removing those certain items opens the floodgates for recruiting in ways that I think it's hard to measure. You know, I do think it makes it a little bit, it deepens your pool of recruits. I don't think there's any question about that. To me, you know, we've always talked about this.
Not to interrupt you. This from a really well-placed source, very close to this situation. Penn State has now turned its full attention to Kalani Sitake. Okay, so one of the things I skipped over here is, and I don't have enough to name the coach by name, but a major name in the Big Ten was the number 2 candidate at Penn State. And now I am told it's Kalani Sitake. And that they are willing to go as high as $11.7 million and $10 million for his staff at Penn State. You're telling me, and now see, this is where why is Penn State willing to pay Kalani Sitake as much as I love the man? Is he worth being one of the highest paid coaches in all of college football?
I mean, he's coached as well as anyone in college football this year.
Yeah, are you telling me that you're going to pay a guy who's making $6.5 million at BYU on an extension he signed less than 365 days ago? You're telling me that you're going to pay him almost $12 million? How fucking desperate is Penn State? How desperate is Penn State? I love Kalani Sitake. I love the man. I'm not paying Kalani Sitake $11.7 million. He's never won a conference championship. He's about to play for one. And he's done amazing things as an independent. And I have a huge problem believing that he would take this job. But is Penn State going to pay Kalani Sitake $11.7 million and $10 million for his assistants?
Nothing on how many years?
No.
I mean,
X guy declined to continue. This other Big Ten coach declined to continue through the process. And it's interesting that in parentheses, the Lane Kiffin drain, because a lot of people don't want to be seen to leave one job to go to another job. And it's a significantly bigger job than the one he has. But this Big Ten coach declined to continue in the conversation. Oh, this is not good. And if I feel like I'm selling Kalani short, but this is the best Penn State can do to pay Kalani Sitake. Are you begging him at $11.7 million?
I mean, I think that it's, I mean, I guess you could verbalize it that way. I think that, I mean, we've talked so much about Penn State over the last 2 weeks and their coaching search, you know, especially with everything going on with Lane Kiffin. And, you know, now we've seen Chesney and Sumrall get jobs and, Lee's not going anywhere. So I sit here and I say, okay, well, if it's not Kalani for Penn State, who's it going to be?
I love the guy. I think he's great. But if we're talking about, and even if you believe that Penn State is, let's pretend it's some great program, right? Let's pretend that all the idiots that are Penn State supporters come in here and, oh, Penn State's great. Okay, let's say that those shitbags are right, and they're not. But let's say they're right. You're paying a guy who's never won a conference championship as a head coach. You're paying that guy $11.7 million. Where are your other candidates?
They don't have any.
And Bob Chesney took the UCLA job because by all accounts, they offered Bob Chesney the job and he took UCLA instead.
So that's why I'm saying, like, it is.
Ooh.
I mean, I can't even. Again, you were just listing all these candidates. I mean, literally, think of all the people they've probably tried to go after. I mean, I'm sure they've had their people call and just see if there's any interest. But Chesney, Sumrall, Clark Lee. Obviously.
Now, here's the other thing. Look at all the guys Penn State has gotten paid. Because their flirtation with some of these guys has gotten guys like Clark Lee an extension. Eli Drinkwitz got an extension.
Matt Rule.
Right? Matt Rule got an extension. Right? But how do you not land Matt Rule? At least Matt Rule has this is a little shocking to me. I think Kalani Sitake is a hell of a coach. And if you can get him, get him. And you guys know I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. Marcus Freeman now apparently has said, I am not interested in the conversation with Penn State. And what does he make? Marcus is making $7 million a year, $9 million a year, something like that. He just got an extension. The nays are much greater than the yays here. This is going to be fascinating to watch. And I think, again, I'll say, and maybe this is what you're paying for, because if I believe it, I have to think the child molesters at Penn State believe it. If you hire Kalani Sitake, my guess is he'll win multiple national championships for you. Because the guy, what do we know about the way that Kalani Sitake recruits? The guy recruits big dudes up front. We were at Notre Dame. I'll tell you, at Notre Dame, we routinely lose running backs and offensive linemen to BYU. I mean, we routinely lose them to BYU. Like, the guy can recruit. And if you're in my question is, if you're at Penn State, is Aaron Roderick your offensive coordinator? Or, because I think you will have to win the Big Ten going forward, you're going to have to play a much more wide open style of football. You're going to have to, and you're seeing it with Bear Bachmeier now, right? You're seeing look at the way Jake Retzloff is performing at Tulane. Wide open style of football. I think it's going to be interesting to see what's the cut of quarterback that he's able to recruit at Penn State. Because, again, average ass Aller, that's not going to get the job done, right? So it's going to be fascinating to see how all this plays out. Because if it is in fact, and I am shocked by that.
I just think that
$11.7 million and $10 million minimum for his staff. Make sure minimum. So
I mean, look at what Lane had his introductory press conference a couple minutes ago.
Yes.
And said that, he told Jimmy Sexton not to tell him his numbers in the contract, but only to tell him the numbers of NIL and how much of a war chest he has to play with. So, I mean, like I said, I think that the numbers for Kalani, like, oddly enough, are just not the main thing here. I think the main thing here are getting his people paid and what he has to work with to go get players. And I think that if BYU, this is a very simple proposition, in my opinion, for BYU. Go out, give the guy what he wants. Like, why are you messing around with your head football coach here, man? Did you think that there weren't going to be suitors? Did you think that people weren't going to try and get him after the job he's done? Because, again, I still maintain that under the constraints of recruiting at BYU, whether you want to call, I know they try to recruit off of it and use it, but the reality is it's a more complicated sell. The guy is kicking ass, dude. The guy is getting talent and crushing the game in recruiting for like 3-4 seasons in a row. And you're seeing the fruits of that labor. His quarterback, decides to allegedly sleep with a Utah fan and gets bounced out of the program. And so you've got a freshman come in here, and they found a way to go 11-1 now. And they only loss was to the best team in the conference, who they're going to get another crack at. And God forbid they win that game. Somehow, some way. I can't find a way they win the game, but somehow, some way they win that game. Dude, and then he leaves because you were unwilling to pay him and his. I mean, it's just a terrible look, dude. It's an awful look that you can't have at BYU, let alone let that go down and then tell me who you're going to go and find. Because I got news for you. You're not finding a guy that's better at what he's doing than Kalani. You're taking a step back, and we just all need to be on the same page about that.
We'll see. I mean, let's get into your comments. Yes, Greg Hawkins, this is the first comment I see today. Will Penn State give Sitake the 3-4 years it will take for him to install his culture in the program? I mean, it's, to me, the biggest question is going to be, you don't pay a guy $11+ million and then don't allow him to bring in his staff and I mean,
Yeah,
I
why would
think,
it take 3-4 years to install the culture? That should be, assuming everyone comes with them, that should be like a year. One culture is like first year right out the box.
well,
We're changing that.
I mean, obviously, Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles is one of the most disappointing hires in the history of Penn State football. I mean, what a terrible defense that was. I mean, just you look at them against Rutgers and brutal. But, the thing that, ooh, yeah, TJ, I don't know the answer to this. The fact that Penn State, here are the things, and let me just reset. We're an hour into the show. Let me reset because I think this is a really interesting point. We have obviously we're kind of ahead on this Kalani Sitake story because we have really good sourcing on this. Kalani Sitake, one of 2 finalists. Now he is the finalist. And I'm not prepared to say the other Big Ten coach's name just because I haven't been able to get it from 3 people. A Big Ten coach in Kalani Sitake, a sitting current Big Ten coach in Kalani Sitake, were the league candidates. They were the 2 finalists at Penn State because Penn State has lost everyone. They even reached out to Jim Mora Jr., who I'm told was just hey, we need a name on a list. I don't think they were ever serious about hiring him. Jim Mora was well down the road already on to Colorado Springs, so that never happened. Like, they've got no. Eli Drinkwitz even refused to fly to Penn State to interview. I mean, they have just been turned down at every opportunity. So they were able to bring these 2 men, Kalani Sitake and a sitting Big Ten coach. That sitting Big Ten coach has now pulled out and has said, I do not wish to continue. Kalani Sitake now is the singular focus at Penn State. And I will keep you up to date, just texting with sources. Penn State is offering Kalani Sitake $11.7 million allegedly and $10+ million for his staff. That is 22, let's round it to $22 million a year in football compensation. That's never happening in Provo. And as we have said, our sources close to the situation have told us that BYU has offered Kalani Sitake an extension. Now, remember the timeline here. Kalani just signed an extension less than a year ago at BYU that took him from $4 million a year to $6.5 million currently. They are now offering him another extension from $6.5 to $9 million. But they are not, and I don't know the number because it's really hard to get financial numbers, but it's very telling that sources close to BYU are telling us that it's $9 million a year for Kalani. They would not answer when I said, well, what's the offer for his staff? Not enough is the answer. The beef with Kalani Sitake is that BYU has been hesitant to add compensation for his assistants and his staff, not just his coordinators, his analysts, his video guys, his performance guys, his strength and conditioning guys. Kalani Sitake feels responsible for those people and their families. He wants them compensated to a point where they are paid on par with their peers, and they currently are significantly below that. I am also told that there was a promise last December when he signed his extension that over the summer, this issue would be taken care of. It has not been. That's a significant rub here. And I think one of the other main issues is that Kalani Sitake feels like BYU's his home. This is his dream job. He has never wanted to be anywhere else. He has had the opportunity to go many other places, has said no. And now Kalani has gotten to the point where I think there is significant frustration over the pay for his assistants and staff. That is why we are here. This is not an issue, and I think this is really important. This is not an issue of how much money Kalani Sitake is making. Because I think Kalani would willingly tell you he is compensated for the rest of his life. He is worried about and this speaks to his character, he is worried about the development of the young people in his care. The players, the staff, his assistants, his GAs, his analysts, because they all have aspirations and they trusted him, is how he looks at it. And he wants to take care of them. Our sources are telling us that Penn State is preparing an offer of $11.7 million per year for Kalani Sitake and $10 million per season for his staff. That is incredible.
Yeah.
That is
massive.
incredible. That is incredible. And I think it's going to be really difficult at that kind of compensation. I think BYU would have to get within $5 million. They would have to pay Kalani, I think, $9 million. I think they would have to pay close to that for his staff. $8 to $9 million for total compensation for his assistants.
But do we think that they would struggle to match that? Like, are we really sitting here saying
that? What does struggle mean?
Well, like we're sitting here kind of saying, well, hey, like that's a lot of money for Kalani and his staff, right? But obviously that's not like the most expensive we've ever seen in college football. No. That's not what Lane's getting, obviously. Not that he should be compared to Lane, but just as a measuring stick, so I don't feel like, again, if BYU said, hey, here's 10 and 10, I don't think this would even be a conversation. He wouldn't, he'd be at BYU. But the fact that there's drama around this and the fact that it's so in the media tells me that, there's clearly a divide. There's clearly a gap. And so my point is, when I say, hey, is BYU struggling to pay this? Are you telling me they don't have this kind of money? We know they must.
Do. I think they do. But President Oaks, the president at BYU, President Oaks is going to have to. This is where you need a new blood. This is where you need younger thinking. This is where you need, because one of the things I've heard all day long is, look at all the money in BYU basketball. Look at all the money at BYU basketball. Look at DeBanza. Look at this guy. Look at the DUI that was or wasn't that's back on the court at BYU basketball. I heard that 3 times today. Look at Jake Retzloff at Tulane. That's a terrible comparison. We don't know. This issue at BYU basketball with this DUI, I do think is a talking point. I do think there is shock that BYU allowed a kid who got a DUI, pled not guilty, to get back on the basketball court after a couple of games. I think there was some shock and surprise by that. I wonder what President Oaks thought about that. I am very curious what the leadership at BYU above the athletic department thought about that. I don't know. But I am just telling you that, yes, the church does not use its wealth for BYU. I think there's a belief, and I hope people understand this. BYU and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I mean, honest to God, they just print money. It's a money-making operation. But you know how they're able to print money? Because they're not stupid business people. The church does not mingle in, hey, who's going to be the new defensive analyst at BYU football and how much are we paying him? That can't pay him, got to put a new door on the temple in Draper. That's not how it works. BYU athletics has a budget. BYU football has a budget. You got to be profitable. You got to operate in the black. BYU football has exponential funds. They could pay $50 million. Well, that's probably too much. They could pay $25 million a year in coaching compensation and still be in the black. Thank you, New Skin. Right? Like, you're not worried about that. What you're worried about is, in my opinion, the damage that this look will do to BYU if Kalani Sitake gets away. He'll never say 2 words about it. Kalani Sitake will thank God, he will thank LaBelle, and he will move on to Penn State if that happens. I don't think it will. But they're not going to, he's not going to trash BYU. That's his home. That is his home. But if they're offering you $22 million in coaching compensation. How do you say no to that?
It's tough.
And if BYU offers you 19, if they pay you 9 and they pay your assistants 10, that would be done.
Already.
That'd be done. Something tells me they haven't. And let me play this bite, because I think this is an important bite. I guess I should change that graphic, shouldn't I?
Oh, how times have changed.
Yeah. How times have changed in the last hour. I think it's really important. Here's Kalani Sitake talking about Penn State.
I have to address it because it's the world is small now, and people can see stuff on social media and everything, and you guys do a great job at covering things, and so yeah, I'll address it. But I also, they're used to me saying, "Hey, this is a good sign," that things are going well for us. But I will say that this isn't about me. What I've asked our team to do is to be focused on what we're trying to accomplish. There are marks of finishers, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to finish the season the right way and get after it. And it's required of us to be at our best to play against Texas Tech. So as we go through this week and go through the prep, I also want them to live through all the moments and have the great experience and not waste a moment thinking about anything else. So I've asked our team to be focused on what we can control, and that's right now we can control what we're doing as a team and not worry about all the distraction. This is a great distraction to have, let's be honest. But right now we need to be focused on making sure that we're giving our best shot in this game against Texas Tech.
Does that sound like a guy getting ready to take a job this week? No, it could be.
It doesn't sound like a guy who's not going through the process.
No, it does not.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a guy who's adamantly against it.
There's not a chance this guy leaves before the championship game. That would be one of the most shocking heel turns I have ever seen.
Are you disappointed that Lane Kiffin handled it the way he did? Because I think this is a really big deal for Kalani and his process. Like, Lane Kiffin leaves before the CFP begins and is obviously not being allowed to coach the CFP for Ole Miss, and says that, hey, I the AD, wouldn't allow me to, but I wanted to, and claims that all the folks at LSU were fine with him doing that for Ole Miss. I mean, I'm a little surprised that Lane was so hot to trot, and handled it in a way that allowed him to be bounced before the CFP got here. That's what I think is tough. And I don't know if I'm Kalani, I mean, how could you? I just don't think that you can put yourself in a position where you're not in the CFP with BYU if you win that Texas Tech game.
So you want to know the lengths that certain people are going through to talk to me about this? And I'm not telling you, hey, man, I'm important.
Hey, Monty.
Nobody knows that I am on a certain encrypted messaging app. Jake knows exactly the one that I'm talking about.
Yes.
I kid you not. Right now, I am texting with a guy on that encrypted app who is telling me point blank, I am reaching out to you because I want you to understand you're very close, but not fully accurate, and I want you to correct the record. We are not refusing to pay his assistants. This is coming down to the long-term viability of BYU football and infrastructure conversations around the financial resources to build the program in a way that Kalani has in his vision. It is not an issue of coaching compensation for Kalani or any other coach or analyst on staff. And I said, what is infrastructure and what is his vision? To which this person said to me, and I'm not going to get into too much detail about where or who or how, or this is a well-placed source close to the situation. Infrastructure includes continuing updates for facilities beyond our regular schedule at BYU, which is of a significant expense. So BYU schedules their facility upgrades renovated locker rooms, renovated media centers, renovated. Like, I know that I had heard the renovation of the indoor practice facility was not happening quick enough. So I'm going to assume it's conversations like that. Kalani has a vision for the program in total. And I know that he's very passionate about making sure the facilities are always top notch. And 99% of the time they are. As far as coaching compensation, your numbers are not incorrect. However, I am not at liberty to share what the assistants are being offered. But trust me when I tell you, assistant compensation is no longer an issue. Okay, so what's the issue then?
Well, it sounds like, again, just based on what you've just said, that this person's telling you, it sounds like the issue is Kalani, sees the program on a certain trajectory and a certain arc of improvement.
Yep.
Both on the field, obviously, and, in the facilities portion and the day-to-day life portion. And it sounds like there's some sort of difference in philosophy there, I guess. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not trying to poke a bear here or something, but isn't that just a roundabout way of saying that Kalani wants, nicer facilities and nicer this and that and the other, whatever it might be, and that takes money, and BYU has regularly scheduled programs to upgrade that stuff, but maybe Kalani wants that to happen a little quicker than maybe those plans stipulate? I mean, so ultimately, again, not trying to say anything, but that's kind of a money issue, I feel like. Now it's gone from initially, hey, well, it's about assistance and stuff like that. Okay, if it's not about that, great. I'm really happy to hear that. That's honestly, that's awesome.
It's what you said about business operations earlier. That's a big part of it. There is a discussion around freedom of the athletic department, specifically Kalani and his football operations team, to do what needs to be done on their own timeline. I've heard that multiple times. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you're just tuning in, I was talking about earlier, somebody close to the situation told me today, when Kalani or somebody in football says, hey, we need a new Gatorade bucket, it's got to go through 5 different layers of management to get one new Gatorade bucket. And I think that's some of that makes sense. That makes sense. Capital improvements are a completely different conversation out of Kalani's purview. Okay.
Right.
There you go. Capital improvement. There you go.
Okay.
Listen, it feels like to me, this is a rapidly evolving conversation at BYU with Kalani Sitake. That's what this feels like. And we're sitting here at 4:15 in the afternoon in Utah, and this feels like a rapidly evolving situation. That to me anyway. I don't know what you think.
Well, I agree. I mean, clearly, yeah. I mean, I completely agree. Yes. But at the same time, I guess I just feel a little bit surprised that I mean, again, we don't know all the intricate details about specific situations and scenarios that Kalani would be frustrated with, but just in the Gatorade cooler example, I mean, I can't believe that a man of Kalani Sitake's stature and influence is, this frustrated. I mean, it really speaks to the clog in the drain pipe, if you will. I mean, it's incredible that
I think it speaks to the changing face of college football.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, dude. Like, on some
he's
level, but
like he's leveraging another job, and this sounds terrible. He's leveraging another job to get the deal he wants at BYU. Because I am convinced. I am as convinced as I have ever been. He is not here to take the Penn State job. I think he would. I don't think that's why he's doing. I think he is doing this to get what he needs for him and his people at BYU.
But I'm really curious, based on what you were just reading from your source, I am really curious about, just how deep the rabbit hole goes with this red tape stuff that he's got to deal with. I mean, I understand it. I can empathize with, hey, dude, like, bro, I'm the head football coach at BYU, and I've got X, Y, and Z needs to get, whatever it is done that we're trying to get done. in any given situation. And I don't want it to take a week to get done. Like, again, like I'm just thinking of examples in day-to-day life for all of us and all of you in the comments section. Like, imagine if it took you a week to go to the grocery store to get whatever you need and you wanted it for dinner like 4 nights ago, dude. Like that would be frustrating. It would be frustrating to have to completely change your systems and processes to accommodate lag time. I mean, I get that. I understand why that would not be enjoyable. But what I think is really kind of crazy, frankly, is the frustration seemingly, if this is indeed true, the frustration is seemingly at such a point that now Penn State's been able to walk through a cracked door. Is that what you're telling me? That there's so much red tape and drama here that Penn State, who's been dormant, Penn State, who hasn't been on the Kalani Sitake front in ever, basically, until today, is now all of a sudden offering bro, what did we say, 11.6 and 10 for his NIL efforts? It's great. It's just a wild thing.
Yeah, I skipped the part about he's gonna have a $50 million war chest in athlete compensation. He's going to have a full revenue share and significant money to pay athletes. Boyd Blake, the newest member of the Monty Show, the SEO King of America. Boyd, good to see you. H-Town King 1. Feels like the coaching pool overall is pretty small at this point. Feels like that's partially why Ole Miss went with Golding on top of stability. Well, I think that the funny thing is about these money conversations, are you telling me that Ole Miss let Lane Kiffin go? Because he was making what? $7 million at Ole Miss? He's getting 13 at LSU. You can't tell me that they were like, nah, we're not going to pay Lane Kiffin. This is the new reality. If it takes $9 million to get Kalani to stay to BYU and $10 million for his staff, you better pay that $19 million. Because that ain't a lot of money. I can tell you that right now. Because the Bamas, what is DeBoer making? $11 million? I mean, if you look at Ohio State, Georgia, I mean, we all know that Kirby's the highest paid coach in college football. They're $25 million in coaching compensation. Is Lane making more than Kirby?
They're even. They're both making 13.
They're both getting $25 million in compensation.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you're not paying your head coach and his staff and infrastructure $20+ million, you're not trying. Because that's going to be the baseline number now. Right? Like you look at that. I mean, you look at the Kalani Sitake stuff. The money's agreed to at BYU, according to sources. The money is not the issue. The money is not the issue. We'll see. This is going to come right down to it. We'll see.
Well, here's the thing, and here's why I think that has a lot of credence and credibility, just based off our conversations. So if you think about, okay, hey, the money's agreed to, but let's wind the clocks back the last 2 cycles, right? Remember the Oregon situation. Remember the Washington situation. It was the same deal, right? Hey, I want these programs are calling. I want more money for me and mine. Okay, great. BYU got it done, no problem. But this I'm calling it the red tape issue. Hey, it takes too many days or too much effort or too much time to get the requests done that I have as the head coach of BYU football, right? So the red tape issue clearly has been building. Hey, it's been building and building and building, cycle and cycle and cycle. And so now BYU or Kalani Sitake has learned how to deal with this issue, but it seemingly, based on what we're being told, no longer wants to deal with the issue. Like, he wants the issue taken care of. He wants to smooth out the process. I want to be able to pay my people on par with the market, and I want it to be easier to get the things that I want for our football program. Which, again, I might add, is not a lot to ask, in my opinion. I get it. There's politics at BYU. Like, I understand there's too many cooks in the kitchen. But if you want to be a big-time program, if you want to win conference championships and go to the CFP and do all these things, and you want to win national championships in basketball, like there's got to be some semblance of a compromise here. So at what point do you just say, okay, this is what we're going to do about it? We're going to, we got to find a way. And that's what is, again, I'm with you. I don't think he's going to leave, but just the fact that it's here and Penn State's calling, the suitors have been getting bigger, dude. The people knocking on the door are getting bigger. I don't know if anyone's paying attention.
I'll remind you what a source close to BYU told us this afternoon. This is as close as he has ever been to leaving BYU. He is, and again, if you're just tuning in, our sources have told us that Kalani now is not only the lead, he is the only candidate for the Penn State job, because a sitting Big Ten coach, and I'm trying to get a third confirmation on it, but a sitting Big Ten coach has pulled his name out of the running for Penn State. And Penn State, I think Penn State is desperate. It's all that I can figure. And again, this is no slight to Kalani Sitake. I think you guys know I am a huge fan of his. But you're trying to pay him $11.7 million and $10 million for his staff. And again, I'm not trying to slight Kalani, but this is a guy who's never won a conference championship. And if I'm looking at the pros and cons, this is a guy who lost 2 huge games to end the year last year to knock them out of the conference championship and knock them out of the CFP. And as an independent, he did amazing things, but he never went to the BCS and he never went to the college football playoff. In the Big 12, he's never gone to the college football playoff. He's never gone to the conference championship game. And you want to pay him $11.7 million. It tells you how, maybe desperate's the word, but I think they know he is the top cut that they're going to have a shot at. And when you lose Bob Chesney, when you can't close Bob Chesney, it tells me there's a flaw somewhere in this Penn State system, because Bob Chesney was the right guy for that job. I mean, you look at what Sig's done in Indiana. The JMU boys know how to coach football. I mean, the mold was made with Sig. And now Bob Chesney, as we told you 2 weeks, I guess a week and a half ago now, Bob Chesney was going to UCLA. They cannot afford, if they don't get Kalani Sitake, I think it is bad days. I really, really do. Calamoni for $20, dude. Appreciate. Congratulations on Tosh Lapoy is probably your dude, right? But $20, Kalani Sitake to Berkeley. Congratulations on finally getting out from under Willie.
Yes.
Good to see you. Stadium Guy James for $5. BYU's coach is right to want his IPF to be improved. The stuff the players use during the week is important. I think BYU is going to step up and do it. But as I said, and as our source confirmed to us, that's a different conversation. Different conversation. Chewy Gonzalez, a member for 12 months.
Nice.
Utah needs to poach Jay Hill as DC and assistant head coach. That's a little perplexing to me. If Kalani leaves BYU, what happens to his staff? Because he's got an all-star staff. I think he's got top 2 or 3 staffs in the entire conference. Jay Hill, Aaron Roderick are his coordinators. Fesi Sitake is going with Kalani. Kelly Papinga is one of the best special teams coordinators in the business, and he coaches defensive ends. I mean, they have been fantastic. You look at Justin Enna as your linebacker coach, they're getting world-class linebacker play, like some of the best linebacker play in the country. Kevin Gilbride coaches tight ends. I mean, you look at Sione Paua, who's their defensive tackles. Harvey Unga is their running back coach. How's LJ been this year? Right? Like, he's got a staff doing the job. And you start looking at guys like Skylar Main, who is their director of high performance. Ryan Phillips, who's their director of strength and conditioning. Like, he's got a staff. How much of that staff stays at BYU and how much of that staff gets broken apart? That's going to be very interesting, in my opinion, to see how that plays out. But we'll see. Doug, is BYU willing to increase the entire budget or not? They are, I think. They are.
I just want to point out, just for perspective for people, the Twitter world is burning right now over this Sitake thing. Bro, the co-founder and CEO of Crumble just tweeted that some people are not replaceable. Sounds like it's time for me to get off the sidelines and get to work. So I'm just saying, the donor pool is paying attention, dude. The donor pool and the advertising pool and all those LLCs and businesses down there in Provo, they're paying attention, man. Just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very interesting.
Okay, so I think here's where I would tell you my update would be this. I think they're really close at Penn State and at BYU. And that tells me it's full-on advantage BYU because Kalani's not looking to leave. Well, you might want to put Moroni on speed dial. That's terrible. Football infrastructure, NIL for players, I think that's a lot of it. But BYU's already going to that level. Phenomenal Hebrew, a noted, I think you're a Penn State fan.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. You sound silly. Okay, Pat Kraft would be asking to be fired. Okay. Had Kalen lost to Auburn, he would have been announced the new Penn State coach today. Dude, that was one of the best games. Ty Simpson, this is my argument. That Auburn-Alabama game is exactly why Ty Simpson needs to stay in school. And listen, the Oregon-Washington game, exactly why Dante Moore needs to stay in school. And maybe this is the Big Ten is going to have, because I also think Sharon Moore's in jeopardy at Michigan. There are some very interesting conversations around how many dudes are going to get in the portal at Michigan, because there are some really unhappy folks in Ann Arbor right now. That's a bad football team. And it's not even that Michigan's a bad team. They're poorly coached. They're a bad fundamental football team. So that league is going to be tough. Once they go down this road, expectations, quality of life, quality of recruits all go up if Kalani gets what he wants. I mean, you guys, if we're being honest, Doug, how does recruiting go up at BYU? I mean, this class, he's the 2026 class. My God. You look at 2024, 25, and 26. These are three of the best recruiting classes in the history of BYU football.
And I'd like to point out he did all this with a quarterback who, in my opinion, is closer to average than elite. Pointing that out.
Because Kalani doesn't just sell the program, he sells the family. He sells the lifestyle. And there's a lot of people at BYU who, or when they look at BYU on the outside, they're like, oh, the honor code, the magic underpants, no sacks. Kalani sells that. Kalani sells, I'm going to make you see a side of you never thought was possible. You're going to be a good human. You're going to grow into a man. You're going to develop morals. You're going to develop character. You're going to develop humanity. And you're going to play in the NFL. And he puts guys in the NFL. And he takes a kid like Parker Kingston, who probably should have been a D1 athlete in curling, and turns him into, I mean, this is what the guy does. And you look at a guy like Puka Nacua. Hey, look, BYU, look at that catch. Puka, like, he doesn't run from the honor code. He doesn't run from the church. He sells it. And he sells it really well. It is, well, just remember, I didn't say that. Just remember, I'm not the one who brought up Brett Bielema's name on this show. just remember that, right? I'm not the one who brought up Brett Bielema's name on this show.
Right.
I didn't do that. Yeah. I'm not the one who brought up Brett Bielema's name in relation to Penn State. Because I am not.
Are you a stupid person?
Yeah. Yes, the coach that I had heard was Brett Bielema was the co-league candidate with Kalani Sitake, and Brett Bielema pulled out because I think Brett Bielema, based on what I was hearing this afternoon, I think Brett Bielema was going in the right. They want a guy who knows defense at Penn State.
They want a guy who knows ball.
At Penn State. I think they would have hired Brett Bielema today if they could have got his name on the line. Because I can also tell you, they have reached out to a lot of folks. And what is interesting is, and it depends on who you believe, but Penn State flew people to Provo to have conversations, and I think Kalani's handled this perfectly. He has tried to stay out of it. He is not engaged in the conversations personally. He is fully focused on BYU football winning the Big 12 championship, and he's handled it well. So remember, I'm not the one that brought up Brett Bielema and stuff. Take charge, Kalani. I love it. The head coach knows what is needed for his team. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Matt Patricia to Penn State. I think Matt Patricia, if he leaves Ohio State, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I don't mean you're dumb. I mean, if he were to make that move, you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. And the other thing is the entire contingent of Ohio State coaches have all kind of slammed the door on Penn State. There's some bad blood with Jim Knowles and Penn State. And I don't think any of those guys, there's some belief that Penn State wants to keep Jim Knowles. And I don't think any of those guys at Ohio State would even have the conversation with Penn State. So we'll see what is what it is. AHC, yeah, associate head coach. Correct. Sounds like Kalani Sitake is using the Penn State job as leverage to get money from BYU for football. So he's staying. Why would he negotiate for more infrastructure at BYU if he were leaving? Well, I've only been saying that for the entire day. You know, Big Blue Horses. What's up, my guy? 25 months. Hey, you got to be real. Can I ask real quick, though? Am I the only one who's like, what? How does John Summerall get away with what Lane Kiffin did within everybody thinks he's a hero? Does anybody else notice that? He's leaving a bowl team, a potential CFP team. I know Jake says I'm stupid. John Summerall is a home run hire. Is he not? I mean, if you look at what, go ahead, say it.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah, he's a great hire. I don't have any doubt about that, but he needs to win ball games. You need to win ball games. You need to prove that the major players in college football can hire from the group of five and have success, because whether we all want to admit it or not, right? And I know recruited his ass off. He's done a great job. I'm not disputing any of that. Dude, the group of five is a lot different than coaching in Florida. Group of five is a lot different than coaching at UCLA or LSU or Penn State or Va Tech, right? Like, it's a different beast. And so, yeah, I think that Summerall, Chesney, like Summerall saying that him and Lane had a phone call where they both mutually agreed he should take the Florida job and Lane should take the LSU job. That's incredible, dude. Incredible. But I'm just telling you, Florida at some point has to get their ass back to being national championship contenders. And I'm not confident, and forgive me, I'm happy to be wrong, that Summerall's a guy. I'm not confident that Chesney's the guy for UCLA, but they're going to get their chance.
I think, first of all, I think Summerall's a dog. I think he is. I mean, this comment right here should win a prize. Like, maybe we should buy you a new well. Penn State's still trying to find a coach. Meanwhile, those bums at Michigan are protecting their logo better than their end zone. Yeah. Yeah. You might want to. Oh, my God. Yes, it was empty. Yes, I did. Good to see you, Scoop. Chris Peterson and Scott Frost agree with Jake here. God, Scott Frost. Man.
It's an ass hire, dude.
Colorado State paying more junior $2.5 million plus $5 million in staff budget. That's pretty damn solid for a G5 program. You know, I think that was a home run hire. I think that was an absolute, and I know I keep saying that. I think this was a great. I think Jim Mora Jr. And I got laughed at by a friend of mine today when I said, I think Jim Mora Jr. might be the best hire of the cycle. If you look at what he, and I know nobody pays attention to UConn football, look at how much talent he had. With no resources and no stadium to speak of. And then Colorado State's a good job. Now, again, like, what do you know, Monty? I don't know ball. I do know that Colorado State's a good job. Willie, Ohio State has 69 players on NFL rosters, most of any college. Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike Smith, what's up, Mike? Good to see you. Oh, West Virginia had a chance. Kind of feel bad for Memphis. Oh, this hire is terrible. Oh my God. They keep playing well, but keep losing coaches every so many years. Their former coach did not seem to fare too well. Am I the only one who thinks that I have no idea what Arkansas is doing? I have no idea what Arkansas is doing. I really
Nothing
don't.
good.
I don't know.
Keep it low right now. We ass.
Well, does that feel like a good hire, you guys? No, it doesn't. BYU would never recover from him leaving, but he isn't leaving. I think they would recover. I again, this isn't a slight. And I feel like I have to keep saying, I really like Kalani Sitake. I respect the hell out of the guy. BYU is never one guy. They're just not. What's Kalani Sitake fighting for? His infrastructure, all of his guys, all of his people, because he knows that. BYU is not one guy. It's a collective of guys. Right? So I love Kalani, and the stuff that he's done for you guys at BYU is over the moon. He has been everything that you would want him to be. He is what Michigan hoped cheating scumbag Jim Harbaugh would have been and never was. This is a kid who played at BYU. He was a Lavelle guy. He openly talked about how this is his dream job. They hired him, and he's got you on the precipice of a college football playoff appearance, which no matter what, in my opinion, you should be there. You probably won't be, but unless you win the conference.